Hi, hello. Welcome to the second episode of Sound of History. This episode is going to be about, drum roll, the history of the invention of sound recording. I will start off by playing the earliest known audio recording of a human voice singing. It's gonna be very short, only a few seconds long. The sound quality will be terrible, very scratchy. It might feel a bit spooky listening to it. Either way, don't expect to hear much. What you just heard was Au clair de la lune from 1860. This very short, 12 seconds to be exact, audio recording is believed to be the world's earliest fully recovered recording of a human voice. Before I continue, I just want to say that this episode will contain some French names and French words, so I apologize beforehand if I am completely mispronouncing them. The recording is made by a Frenchman called Édouard-Léon Scott de Martinville. He is the inventor of the world's earliest known sound recording device, the phonautograph. It was patented already back in 1857, and before he recorded Au clair de la lune, he made some earlier recording experiments from around 1854. But these were made on his prototype machine. Those recordings are mostly testing sounds of speech, also a bit of singing, and reciting the Lord's Prayer. But unfortunately, they are mostly indecipherable as the speed of the recording device, the prototype machine, was not properly regulated. 1857. Let's try to imagine what life was like in France in 1857. Around this time in France, society was industrializing, especially in cities like Paris, Lyon, and Marseille. Railroads expanded, factories grew, and coal mining increased. A small but growing urban working class emerged, which means that people that had before lived in the countryside were now leaving and moving towards the bigger cities in search for work. Napoleon III was the ruler, and the country was divided into three groups, which were the wealthy elite, the emerging bourgeois middle class, and working class. The 1860s was a time of cultural vitality with advancements in literature, art, and science. Authors like Gustave Flaubert were active during this period. Flaubert wrote the scandalous social commentary book Madame Bovary, which is considered to be one of the first great works of literary realism. Madame Bovary is about a restless doctor's wife, Emma Bovary, who seeks to escape her mundane provincial life through romantic fantasies, extramarital affairs, and extravagant spending, ultimately leading to her tragic downfall. When the book was released in 1857, the same year as Édouard-Léon patented his phonautograph, it caused a scandal in France due to its candid description of adultery, sexuality, and moral corruption. The French government charged Gustave Flaubert with obscenity, arguing that the book promoted immorality and undermined the values of how one should behave and live according to society. Also around the same time as Édouard-Léon had patented his phonautograph and starting to make his voice recordings, among the artists that were active at the time were modernist painters such as Edouard Manet. You've probably seen his paintings. He's quite well known, considered one of the greats. If I would describe what they look like, I would say everyday realism, but with like a romantic touch. Edouard Manet often painted people and human interactions in different everyday settings. Pretty women in pretty dresses, boat rides on water, and gatherings at parties, to name a few of his motifs. Photography existed during this time, but back then it was a complex process reserved mainly for professionals and wealthy hobbyists. Photo studios in cities like Paris were thriving. Everyone wanted to have their pictures taken. Édouard-Léon Scott de Martinville, he was a printer by trade and well-read, and it was by reading about scientific discoveries that inspired him to become an inventor himself. His idea behind the phonautograph was that he wanted to record the sound of human speech in a way similar to what at the time technology of photography could capture with light and image. But the phonautograph could only create visual images of sound and did not have the ability to play it back. The phonautograph collected sound by using a horn attached to a diaphragm, which vibrated with a stiff bristle and inscribed an image on a lamp-black coated hand-cranked cylinder. But like I said, it could only inscribe the sound and not play back its recordings. Martinville's intention was for the device's sound waves to be read back by humans like we read text, which turned out to be quite impractical. His recording, the one that I played earlier, amongst other of his recordings, were discovered in an archive by American audio historians in 2008, and with the help of modern technology, they were able to somehow extract the sound scribbled on the old piece of paper, which is now considered to be the oldest recording of a human voice. The same recording of Au clair de la lune, slowed down, which is believed to be the correct speed, instead plays back a man's voice, and it's believed to be Édouard-Léon singing himself. And we are going to listen to that now. Is it just me, or is there something haunting about listening to old recordings? To be able to listen to the voice of someone who lived almost 200 years ago, it's pretty special. Now we're gonna leave Édouard-Léon Scott de Martinville and France and skip forward around 20 years or so and move across the Atlantic to America. The year is 1877, and the phonograph has just been invented by Thomas Edison together with his team. It's a breakthrough device that can both record and play back sound, marking one of the earliest steps towards audio recording technology. Edison's phonograph used a tinfoil cylinder that rotated while a stylus vibrated to carve sound waves onto the surface. By reversing the process, the phonograph could play back the recorded sounds. Edison's first audio recordings were experimental and made to test the phonograph's capabilities. His first 3 recordings was him reciting nursery rhymes such as Mary Had a Little Lamb and Old Mother Hubbard. His third recording was him speaking numbers and words, ensuring that the device could consistently reproduce the sounds. The original 1877 recordings were not saved and no longer exists, unfortunately. But I did find a recording of Thomas Edison reciting Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star from 1887. We're gonna listen to that recording now.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. When the blazing sun is gone, when he nothing shines upon, then you show your little light, twinkle, twinkle over night.
After Thomas Edison's early experiments, he kind of moved away from working on to improve the phonograph, and instead he shifted his focus on developing the electric light, and therefore the project was kind of put on the back burner. In his writings, Edison recounts his very first phonograph recording, and I'm going to read that text now. I designed a little machine using a cylinder provided with grooves around the surface. Over this was to be placed tinfoil, which easily received and recorded the movements of the diaphragm. Cruzy, the machinist, when he had nearly finished it, asked what it was for. I told him I was going to record talking and then have the machine talk back. He thought it absurd. However, it was finished, the foil was put on, and then I shouted, Mary had a little lamb, etc. I adjusted the reproducer, and the machine reproduced it perfectly. I was never so taken aback in my life. Everybody was astonished. I was always afraid of things that worked the first time. End quote. So as Thomas Edison instead prioritized developing the electric light, instead Volta Labs continued experimenting with various ways of recording sound. Volta Laboratory, commonly referred to as Volta Labs, was a research facility established by Alexander Graham Bell in 1878. Bell had established a laboratory with the aim of advancing scientific knowledge in the fields of sound, acoustics, and communication technologies. Here is a recording from 1884 with the voice of Chichester Bell, an engineer working for Volta Labs, reciting Hamlet's "To be or not to be."
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is no daring mind to settle the things and errors of our understanding, or to go down against the clear pattern, and that reason only. To the end,
I don't know how much of that you were able to make out. I can hear a vague to be or not to be in the beginning of the recording. And then I think it sounds like there is some sort of music or singing in the background. I'm not being super exact or precisely chronological playing back these old recordings. I'm just merely giving a kind of overview of some of the earliest sounds and songs that were ever recorded. I feel that some recordings simply has too bad sound quality that it will not work well playing them in a podcast format. You won't be able to hear much. So, skip forward a couple of years to a song recorded in 1888, written by a famous at the time English composer named Arthur Sullivan. The name of the song is The Lost Chord. This 1888 recording of The Lost Chord holds a special place in history. It seems that up until this point, the focus had mostly been to record speech in various ways. And by this recording, to record music and instruments playing for the first time, that we know about anyway. I will add though that Édouard-Léon Scott de Martinville did record cornet playing scales already back in 1857, but this was recently discovered. Anyway, by making this recording of The Lost Chord, it truly opened the eyes to the untapped potential of music recording. The Lost Chord is one of the earliest surviving examples of recorded music. And like I said, it demonstrated the possibilities of Edison's phonograph to not only preserve speech, but also music. And this was revolutionary at the time. The recording captured the imagination of audiences and paved the way for the commercial music industry. Although the audio quality is not very impressive by modern standards, it is a valuable artifact of early recording technology and a testament to the emotional power of music. The story behind The Lost Chord, composed by Sir Arthur Sullivan in 1877, is one of emotional and personal significance. The lyrics for The Lost Chord, which you couldn't hear in this recording unfortunately, were written by Adelaide Ann Proctor. She was a popular poet of the Victorian era. Her poem A Lost Chord was published in 1858, and it's basically about someone sitting by the organ, playing music and reflecting on spiritual longing and divine harmony. Arthur Sullivan composed the music for the poem while sitting at the bedside of his dying brother, Fred Sullivan, who was gravely ill. And he later described the act of setting the words to music as a deeply emotional and cathartic experience during this difficult time. But since you might not have heard the poem and don't have a clue what I'm talking about, I decided to read an excerpt from the poem. Here it goes. A Lost Chord by Adelaide Ann Proctor. Seated one day at the organ, I was weary and ill at ease, and my fingers wandered idly over the noisy keys. I do not know what I was playing or what I was dreaming then, but I struck one chord of music like the sound of a great amen. It flooded the crimson twilight like the close of an angel's psalm, and it lay on my fevered spirit with a touch of infinite calm. Yeah, I'm gonna stop there. The song remained popular well into the 20th century. There is even a popular belief that The Lost Chord was played as the Titanic sank. Survivors of the Titanic disaster reported that the ship's band continued playing music as the vessel went down on April 15, 1912. This act of bravery and selflessness became legendary. While there is no complete consensus on the exact pieces performed by the orchestra as Titanic was sinking, accounts suggest that the band was playing hymns and other calming pieces to help soothe passengers in the chaotic final moments. Some survivors or secondary accounts claim that The Lost Chord was one of the songs played by the band, possibly because of its peaceful and reflective themes. From the phonautograph to the phonograph, we have now arrived at the gramophone. Between the late 1880s to 1890s, Emil Berliner's gramophone discs were some of the earliest commercially available recordings, capturing various songs and performances. Emil Berliner was a German-American inventor and entrepreneur, best known for inventing the flat disc record and the gramophone, which revolutionized the way sound was recorded and played back. In 1887, Berliner patented the gramophone. It was a device that used flat discs instead of cylinders, and the flat disc format was easier to mass produce and easier to store, which eventually made it the dominant medium for recorded sound. Berliner founded several companies to manufacture and commercialize his inventions, including the Berliner Gramophone Company. And his companies produced the first widely available commercial records. And thanks to his gramophone and flat disc record inventions, it democratized the access to music, allowing people to listen to professional recordings in their homes for the first time. He also worked to standardize the record industry, including establishing the 78 RPM speed for early recordings. Emil Berliner's inventions and entrepreneurial efforts played a very important role in shaping the modern entertainment and recording industries. The first Berliner gramophone was made in Germany by the toy maker Kemmer and Reinhard. It was a toy that had a cardboard horn and was operated by a hand crank. It could play 5-inch rubber discs, and one of the records produced for the toy was Auld Lang Syne, probably sung by Emil Berliner himself. It was made in 1890. Here's an odd, fun fact that at least I was unaware of up until now. Auld Lang Syne used to be the national anthem of the Maldives up until 1972, as well as South Korea's national anthem between the years 1945 to 1948. The first known recording of classical music, or a classical music performance, I should say, took place in 1888, and it captured excerpts from Handel's Oratio, Israel in Egypt. This groundbreaking event marked a milestone in the history of music and sound recording, bridging the gap between live performance and the ability to preserve music for future generations. The recording was conducted by George Edward Gouraud. He was Thomas Edison's representative in Europe, and it was during a public demonstration in London. The event showcased the potential of sound recording technology to capture and reproduce complex musical performances. The recording was made during a performance at Crystal Palace, which was a major cultural venue in London at the time. And the music was performed by the Crystal Palace Choir, which were famous for their excellence in large-scale choral works. The technology of the time imposed some significant constraints. Only short excerpts could be recorded due to the limited capacity of wax cylinders. And the sound quality was terrible, not great, with a narrow dynamic range and a lot of noise and distortion, making it difficult to distinguish individual voices or orchestral details. But this was the first known attempt to preserve a performance of classical music. And while the sound quality is not great, the recording proved that large-scale works could be documented using phonographic technology. And we are now going to listen to the Crystal Palace Choir singing Handel's Oratio, Israel in Egypt, from 1888. I just want to give a heads up that this recording is about 7 minutes long. So for everyone who really enjoys listening to these old scratchy recordings, you're going to have a great time. And if there is someone who maybe finds the sound quality too bad, you can skip forward a couple of minutes. Another important but smaller chapter in the history of audio recording is the Bettini cylinder recordings. They were developed in the 1890s by Gianni Bettini. He was an Italian inventor and sound recording pioneer, and maybe also the world's first audiophile. He lived in New York City and later in Paris. Bettini made some enhancements on Edison's phonograph to improve its sound quality. He had mainly musical and vocal recordings in mind, and they were renowned for their superior audio quality compared to standard Edison cylinders. They captured more nuanced performances, especially opera and classical music. Bettini's cylinders were not mass-produced. Instead, they were often custom-made, which makes surviving examples rare and highly valuable to historians and collectors. With the breakthrough of Emil Berliner's flat disk records and other technological advancements, Bettini's cylinders faced competition, and the rise of mass production led to the shift away from wax cylinders and eventually led to Bettini's decline in the recording industry. During the years 1901 to 1903, the New York Metropolitan Opera had a librarian named Lionel Mapleson, and he used an Edison phonograph upgraded with a Bettini micro recorder to record hundreds of brief excerpts of live on stage performances known as the Mapleson cylinders. Mapleson captured the voices of singers, including those who never made commercial recordings. We will now listen to a Mapleson cylinder recording of Jan de Reszke, a Polish tenor regarded as one of the greatest opera stars of the late 19th century. Here he is singing Wagner's opera Lohengrin.
March the 29th, 1901, at the Metropolitan Opera House, New York.
That was all from me and Sound of History for this time. I feel like I'm just getting warmed up. I'm really excited and really looking forward to the coming episodes. It's so much fun. I love doing the research and listening to this like old music. I've had a few songs stuck in my head on repeat, which is a quite cool feeling that you're like walking around and singing a song that's 100 years old. But now I'm saying goodbye, and until next time.